Hello everyone, today's video is on Gregory Scott Johnson, the Pyromaniac who killed an 82-year-old woman, which landed him on death row.
Throughout history, there have been people who have committed some of the most heinous crimes fathomable. For those crimes, they have been convicted and sentenced to death. Welcome to Death Row Executions, where we take a look into the lives of society's worst offenders. And now, your host, Air.
Gregory Scott Johnson was born on October 17, 1963 in Akron, Ohio. He grew up in a troubled environment that was marked by poverty and instability. His mother, Alice Newman, struggled with addiction to illegal substances and had a history of criminal activity. As a result, Gregory suffered from neglect and exposure to criminal behavior. Alice played a significant role in Gregory's life, albeit not a positive one. She was unable to provide him with a stable and nurturing environment due to her own personal struggles. There was a lack of emotional support and guidance as well. Gregory had many struggles in school, and his mother had to come to the school a few times because of complaints about his behavior. Gregory would often complain to other adults about the lack of parental attention due to the fact that his father was not in the picture and he did not get the love that he wanted from his mother. Addicted to drugs, Alice would constantly bring men into the home, but she eventually found a man that stayed with them long term, and Gregory considered him to be a stepfather. The man's name was Frank Newman. Gregory also found out later in life that Frank Newman was not his stepfather, but his biological father. It is unclear why Alice and Frank kept this from Gregory for so long. The psychological warfare going on caused Gregory to start harming himself as a form of release and escape. He began drinking at the start of middle school, and around that time, he was also ordered 8 months of counseling at a center for mental health. He also spent 12 months in Crossroads Children's Home in Fort Wayne. Despite Gregory's struggles and still needing to stay at a boys' home, he was able to graduate high school. After graduating, Gregory attempted to make an honest living, and he joined the National Guard. He served for 9 months and then decided to switch to the Army. He was only in the Army for 2 months, though, because he was discharged. The Army was unaware of his juvenile record, and they felt since he did not disclose that information, it was grounds for being discharged. After being kicked out of the Army, he continued over-drinking and abusing illegal substances. He was arrested on 6 separate occasions for illegal consumption and an attempted burglary charge. Fast forward to 1985. Gregory had been working at a car wash and a restaurant, but he ended up losing both of his jobs. With nothing better to do, starting in May of 1985, Gregory set one house and 3 garages on fire over the course of 3 months. His obsession for fire continued to grow, and he became a pyromaniac. One day on June 23, 1985, a newspaper delivery boy was working his route early in the morning. It was about 6 a.m. when he passed the home of 82-year-old Ruby Hustler. Ruby was a small, frail woman who had not retired and was still working. She worked at a factory and lived at home all by herself. She had lost 2 husbands, and her only child died as well. The delivery boy observed smoke coming out from under the eaves of Ruby's roof. He alerted neighbors and tried to stop passers-by. 2 passers-by attempted to enter the house, but the main front door was locked. They then went to the nearest front window of the house and broke it open, but they were still unable to enter the home. The passers-by then made their way to the back of the house and found the back door open, but were unable to enter because of the heat and smoke. They did notice that a basement window had been unscrewed, broken, and removed, but they were still unable to enter from that window as well. Firemen arrived at the scene at around 6:30 in the morning, 30 minutes after the delivery boy had neighbors call for help. One fireman noticed a pane of glass in the front door broken, so he attempted to reach his hand through it to unlock the front door, but he was unable to unlock the door because of the intense heat. Another fireman who was fully equipped in his gear broke open the front door, entered the living room crawling, and found poor Ruby Hustler on the floor about 6 feet away from the front door. She was immediately carried out of the house, and they tried to resuscitate her, but they were unsuccessful. She was then transported to the hospital and was pronounced dead upon arrival. An autopsy was conducted to determine the cause of her death, and it was concluded that Ruby died not from smoke inhalation or burning, but from blunt force trauma to the head, neck, and chest. An investigation began to find out who killed innocent Ruby. Experts determined that the fire at Ruby's house started in the center of her house and had climbed a stairway and concentrated in the attic. It was also noted that drawers in the dresser had been pulled out, and some were dumped out completely. Some small boxes and containers had been opened, and whatever was inside was dumped out as well. Ruby's clothes were scattered everywhere, and her mattress was removed from the bed frame. The house was in shambles, and it was not due to the firemen who entered the house. Rewinding back to the day of the crime. 10 minutes after firemen arrived at Ruby's house, a police radio broadcast instructed officers to be on the lookout for Gregory because he was suspected of setting several fires in the area Ruby lived in. Within minutes, Gregory was spotted by Detective Miller. Gregory was standing on the street with other onlookers who were observing the firemen try and put out the fire at Ruby's house. Detective Miller had run-ins with Gregory before, so they knew each other. Detective Miller approached Gregory, spoke to him, and observed that Gregory's eyes were bloodshot, his breath smelled of alcohol, and he was unsteady on his feet. On top of that, he appeared to be nervous and anxious. His clothes were dirty, and they were in disarray. One of the onlookers said that Gregory stood too close to him and was extremely sweaty. The onlooker tried to move away from Gregory, but Gregory moved right along with the onlooker. Detective Miller ended up arresting Gregory for public intoxication. After being arrested, Gregory was searched, placed in the squad car, and read his Miranda rights. Gregory was extremely upset, became agitated, and started swearing at officers, but he did say he understood his rights. Detective Miller said that Gregory's intoxication went from slight to moderate. They wanted to find out if Gregory had possibly ingested more drugs while in custody, but a pharmacologist said it was not possible to accurately predict the effect of the ingestion of substances, but a person who had done so would suffer loss of muscle coordination. Officer Adams documented that Gregory was kicking hard inside of the squad car, and he walked over to him and asked him what was wrong. Gregory replied by saying he did not have a chance because of his upbringing. He then said, "Wisehart didn't kill the bitch, I did." Officer Adams then questioned, "Did you, Scott?" Gregory replied, "No, but if that's the way you fuckers want to play." Gregory was transported to the local police station at 8:20 in the morning and given his Miranda rights for the second time by Captain Hanlon. Captain Hanlon interrogated Gregory, and during the first interrogation, Gregory signed a written acknowledgement and waiver of rights and denied any involvement in the crime against Ruby. He gave 4 written statements, and in those statements, he did admit to having set or having attempted to set 4 fires in the area in the past. Captain Hanlon said that when Gregory was writing his statements, he smelled strongly of alcohol, his eyes were bloodshot, and he manifested anger. Captain Hanlon left Gregory alone in the interrogation room for a while so he could sleep for a while. After sleeping for some hours, he woke up and was informed that Ruby Hustler was dead. At noon, it was documented that Gregory threw up. After some time, police gave him food, drinks, and cigarettes. After he was done eating and smoking, Captain Hanlon said he did not appear to be exhausted and he was sobering up. At around 3:30 p.m., Captain Hanlon continued the interrogation. He began asking Gregory if the fire set at Ruby's house was an attempt to join Mark on death row. Gregory placed his hands on his head and got emotional. He finally admitted to breaking into Ruby's home. He said he did do it so that he could join his friend Mark Wisehart, who was on death row. He claimed that it hurt him that he testified as a prosecution witness against his friend Mark, who was eventually charged with capital murder. He felt that he needed to be on death row as well. Who knows what was happening at the Crossroads boys' home Gregory lived at when he was younger, but that is where he met his best friend and fellow killer, Mark Wisehart. Gregory then told Captain Hanlon that he entered the home by breaking a front window with a broom, and he said that 90-pound Ruby was standing in the house with her nightclothes on. After assaulting Ruby, she stayed on the floor struggling with her labored breathing. He claimed that as she was laying on the floor, he continued stepping on her as he was walking back and forth in the house. He was able to steal a watch and silver dollars. After stealing those items, he found some matches, started the fire, and fled out the back door. Gregory said that he threw the watch and coins out somewhere when he joined the onlookers watching the firemen at Ruby's house. Gregory was charged and indicted on murder charges. Before trial began, Gregory and his team sought to disallow the use of all written reports by police officers and firefighters concerning their investigations of the crimes at issue in court. The judge denied Gregory's request, and all reports and written confessions were allowed to be shown in court. Gregory had 10 witnesses testify on his behalf, but they were of no help. At the conclusion of trial, Gregory was sentenced to death. The death sentence was supported by the aggravating circumstance that the killing had been done intentionally while committing the crimes of burglary and arson. Over the years, Gregory did try to appeal his sentence, but all of his appeals were denied. One appeal was for his execution to be rescheduled so that he could donate his liver to his sister, Deborah Otis. Deborah suffered from liver disease and would die without a transplant. She was living in a nursing home and was having a hard time. Gregory was quoted saying, "Chances are I'm not going to be needing it very long," in referring to his liver. His intentions were to leave something positive behind because he knew he wreaked so much havoc on society. Some experts said that using organs after executions is impossible because the drugs that stop the heart poison other organs. One doctor said it was possible that the liver could be used, so Gregory's attorneys fought hard for Gregory to be tested to see if he and his sister were a match. His defense attorney said the law actually requires that Gregory's liver be harvested in a way that would allow him to survive. His attorneys were quoted saying, "He is sincere when he says he is doing this for her, and not as a last-minute desperate attempt to delay his execution. She is a mother and a grandmother. She has much to live for." The defense attorneys also responded to doctors saying that Gregory's liver wouldn't be suitable. They said that doctors could do a split liver transplant where Deborah would get a piece of Gregory's liver and the remainder of the organ in Gregory would regenerate in time for him to be healthy enough to be put to death. They said that the healing time for that procedure would take up to 2 months. They ended with saying that Gregory was still willing to give up his whole liver, even if the procedure would kill him. Mitch Daniels agreed with the Indiana Parole Board when they voted unanimously to deny Gregory's 90-day stay of execution so that he could donate part of his liver. Governor Mitch then released a letter from 2 experts at Indiana University Hospital's Transplant Center. In the letter, it stated that Gregory's liver was not a good match for his sister Deborah because he had hepatitis B and large body weight, which made his liver less desirable. They also stated that his sister needed a full liver, not a partial liver transplant. If Deborah matched with a liver donor, that same donor would also have to donate their kidney. Deborah's organ was afflicted with non-alcoholic cirrhosis, and she was not on the transplant waiting list because of a current temporary medical complication. Governor Mitch ended the letter by saying once Deborah cleared her medical complication, she would likely get a liver and a kidney within 20 days after being put on the transplant waiting list. Gregory was frustrated with his 90-day stay being denied. The parole board improperly concluded that I was not sincere and there had been no change from the Gregory Scott Johnson of 20 years ago. If you refuse to acknowledge any change or any attempts to change, then you are shredding portions of the Indiana Constitution, Article 1, Section 19. The penal code shall be based on principles of reformation and not vindictive. Thanks to all of you for your prayers. I'll see you on the other side. When it was time for Gregory's May 25, 2005 execution, he was granted his request to enjoy his last meal with his attorneys. Although he chose to eat with his attorneys, he requested different food. He had ribs, pulled pork, sautéed mushrooms, soda, and chocolate cheesecake. He actually requested Oreo pie, but the location they got the food from was out of Oreo pie. Gregory also ordered a pizza for his attorneys to share together. For his final words, he addressed the prison officials. Everyone has been professional. Gregory was executed by method of lethal injection at 12:28 a.m. at the Indiana State Prison, 12 hours after Governor Mitch Daniels denied his last clemency request. After Gregory was executed, his final handwritten statement was released to the public. In it, he expressed hope that his sister would survive even without his liver. There are those that claim that Debbie will have a new liver 3 weeks after being placed on the list. I'll be watching from above and expect her to be recuperating at that time. Thank you all for watching another episode of Death Row Executions. Let me know what you guys think of this video in the comments below. Also, please consider supporting me on Patreon or YouTube Gold. You will have access to early and unreleased videos, you will be able to vote for upcoming videos, and there are no ads on the videos. On Patreon, you also have the option to private message me. Thank you all again for your support and see you for the next video.